The Montreal Canadiens lost one of its greats with the announcement of the passing of longtime captain Jean Beliveau. On this week's, we dedicate our 4 Down segment to number 4, Le Gros Bill. As always, we invite you to share your opinions, have your say on our social networks at facebook.com/RBTL Sports, as well as on Twitter at RBTL Sports. We welcome to the show the voice of the Montreal Canadiens. That's Michel Lacroix. Great to have you.
Nice to be with you.
You called your first game in 1977. Fast forward 37 years. Here you are right now on the set of REID Between The Lines. Great to have you.
Same here. Pleasure to meet.
To your right is Anthony Cornelli, RBTL contributor. Great to see you.
Great to be back.
And last but not least, co-host David Hurley. All right, gentlemen, start with you, Michel. Safe to say, we already know that Jean Beliveau, I think most would agree, is the greatest captain of all time, or at least of the Montreal Canadiens. Can we throw the question out, or I'll throw it to you? Is he the greatest captain that the National Hockey League has ever seen with one organization?
To be honest with you, I think I'd say yes, because what he's done on the ice is one thing, but off the ice is also something very special. I think we should go back when we select a captain to not only the athlete, but also to the man who means so much to a community.
So do you believe the criteria has changed in today's NHL in terms of
definitely,
leadership?
Yeah.
Right.
But the NHL has changed. Let's not forget that when we're going back to the 60s, I mean, players were involved with the team, with the same team for many, many years,
Right.
and that is not the case today. So we do have to set, I'd say, different standards. But personally, I think that even though we had great captains, from Butch Bouchard, that we named the captain of captains, to Jean Beliveau, the greatest ambassador of all ambassadors, but I think that the way I see Mr. Beliveau as a man, as a hockey player, I think that he is on top of all the captains in the NHL.
Well, if you look at statistically, and today it's all about stats, Marc Messier has just as good stats as Jean Beliveau does.
Sure.
He might not have the 10 Stanley Cups. He has 5. He led Edmonton Oilers to 4 Stanley Cups.
Second all-time as well.
One without Wayne Gretzky, which was the big one in 1990. And then he went to New York and won their first Stanley Cup after 40 or 50 years.
But I don't think you can disagree, though, and I tend to agree with you, Michel. You can't argue the contribution that Jean Beliveau has made to the organization and to the community. And when you pass, and they're talking more about who you are as a person than the actual player, I mean, that speaks volumes.
Yeah, and you got to look at the NHL legends. You know, you hear of Gordie Howe, you hear of Wayne Gretzky, and the way that people have been saying the nicest things about Jean Beliveau, it's unbelievable. I mean, the guy's done so much off the ice as much as he's done on the ice.
I haven't heard one bad comment.
Absolutely not. And I mean, you look at the Montreal community, the way it stood up and said thank you to a great man, and said, you know, a guy who had time to answer every letter that people wrote to him. That says something about your character, your personality, and that's why he's been such a great ambassador and a great captain.
If you were to choose an ambassador in today's NHL that does represent some of those values of Jean Beliveau, is there one that stands out in terms of franchise player? You mentioned it before, a lot of these guys don't stay with the same organization. But if you had to make a choice, I'd be curious to know who you'd pick right now.
I'd probably go with a guy like Martin Brodeur, or a guy like Ray Bourque at the time, or somebody who stayed with the same organization for years. I don't know anyone who's leading.
I will go with a guy who just retired this year, who you had the pleasure of saying his number and his name quite a bit, in number 11, Saku Koivu. I mean, that guy was just as good, if not.
If we go sheer longevity, he
was
deserves
right up
the spot
there.
right up
Absolutely.
there, right? He is the
was a
longer
great
tenured
for me.
captain of all time for the Habs. So
I think what's important here when we speak about Jean Beliveau is not, a lot of people don't speak just about his hockey. We speak about what he did off the ice. Like you mentioned, he was a great ambassador. He did great charity work when he was done his career. He worked a lot with kids. So it's very, very nice to see that people are remembering him as a man first, than just a hockey player, a great hockey player.
You know, it didn't surprise me, but when you look at the reaction of his former teammates, Yvan Cournoyer, Dickie Moore, Gilles Tremblay spoke, because Gilles and I worked together very closely when I first started with the team, and they were always talking about Jean Beliveau as a captain. Whatever they needed, they'd turn, they'd talk to Jean. He would listen, give them their advice, and it goes from Doug Harvey to all of them. And Yvan Cournoyer was also deeply touched by the passing of Mr. Beliveau.
I want to change topics a little bit and change gears and bring it to the present with the Montreal Canadiens, who are going through a tough spell. Stay right there. Don't go anywhere. I want to talk about the Habs. They've only won one game in their last 7, 3 games in their last 10. We're talking Habs right after the break. Stay with us.